Are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle just spoiled and entitled brats? Hello everyone, welcome to Royal News Network. My name is Brittany, and today we're going to be talking about the third grouping of extracts from Valentine Low's new book on the palace courtiers, and basically kind of the implosion that happened when Harry and Meghan decided that they wanted to pursue Megxit, and how Harry and Meghan really came at the whole situation from this very grandiose, entitled attitude that really kind of makes them come across looking like spoiled brats. And I also couldn't help but think, as I was reading through it, that although you could see both sides, that yes, the palace didn't do everything right, Harry and Meghan didn't do everything right, I still just wonder, is this the road? Is this a path that Harry really wanted to pursue in his heart of hearts? Or was he twisted and manipulated by Meghan Markle to help her pursue her Hollywood dreams? Because, quite frankly, she kind of failed as a big-time actress, and I feel like she's still chasing that fame monster that she always wanted and could never achieve on her own, but happened to find a husband who was kind of willing to help her do it. But if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany, and on this channel we provide compelling royal commentary on the news of the day and some gossip as well. So if you guys enjoy that, feel free to hit that subscribe button. We're also going to do some reviews on television shows and movies and do a bit of history too. So if that's something that is of interest to you, again, I would love to see you subscribe. And I'm also starting a fashion channel that will be launching in October, and I'm so excited about it, and I'm so thankful for all of you guys who have already subscribed. Thank you so much. And so I have a lot of great content planned for that. We'll be going over tiaras, jewelry, fashion, doing like fashion of the week polls and those sorts of things, and I am so excited about that. So I will put a link in the description down below if that's something that is of interest to you. But like I said, we're going to take a couple of steps back and look at Prince Harry and Meghan Markle yet again. I know some people get sick of them, but this book, I think, is actually, or at least the excerpts that we've seen so far, really demonstrate why the whole Harry and Meghan thing just was never going to work. And I think it's purely because Meghan Markle never wanted it to work. And she, even if somebody tried to teach her X, Y, and Z, she did not care. She wanted what she wanted, you know, basically darn everybody else. That was Meghan Markle's attitude. And I think it's really coming through of how big a failure that has been for her and Harry, and how really it has led them in many ways to ruin. Anymore, they're mostly kind of a laughing stock. And you can see how this kind of progression happened and how really the palace bent over backwards to try to please them. But nothing was ever enough for Meghan Markle. So without further ado, let's get started. When we left off last time, Harry and Meghan had basically gone to Canada and they were planning Megxit during the Christmas season of 2019. Just as a note, this was the second to last Christmas of Prince Philip and the third to last Christmas for the Queen. So Harry and Meghan missed out on the rest of the Christmases with his grandparents because they wanted to pursue this agenda. And like I said, I think you'll see that although, I mean, I'm just not convinced this is totally where Harry wants to be in his life. Could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong. So they had planned this and they were just going to drop this bombshell, but apparently they tried to negotiate over email first. That's not even as bad as resigning over email. It's like 1,000 times worse. So they said, before Harry and Meghan returned from Canada in January 2020, where they spent Christmas with their baby son Archie, away from the rest of the family, Harry sent an email to his father saying that they were unhappy. The current setup was not working for them, and they wanted to go live in North America. Harry seemed to be under the impression that they could just sort it out by email before he and Meghan got back to London on January 6th. The reply they got, however, was that this would require a proper family conversation. They were also told that the first date that the family would be available was January 29th. It is not clear if this inflexibility was on the part of Charles, who was due to be in Davos, or if this was the response from his longtime private secretary, Clive Alderton, pulling the strings. Either way, the Sussex point of view, this went down incredibly badly. It fed into their narrative that they were not being taken seriously by the palace machinery or by the rest of the family. And I would agree, they were probably not being taken seriously, partly because everybody just kind of thought they were acting like teenagers and spoiled brats. I think that's kind of the mentality. Like, you don't take a teenager's, say, well, I'm never going to talk again. Seriously, because of course they're going to talk. They're a teenager, they're preteen, whatever. I mean, even Sam Cohen, who was their private secretary, said, basically you're like dealing with a couple of teenagers. They are kind of spoiled brats. That's basically the description we have of them. They're very entitled, they're very pompous, they're very arrogant. And so when the family first heard about this, they were like, okay, whatever, we'll deal with this later, because it's in the middle of Christmas season, duh. Everybody's kind of off. They have to get things kind of started back in the new year. So it's not like everybody could drop everything because Harry and Meghan all of a sudden are making all these demands. And Harry and Meghan, you would think as like rational adults, would realize that something like this does require a family sit down. They haven't really tried anything like this because Meghan seems to think that what her and Harry wanted is just like what Eugenie and Beatrice have. But it was not the same thing. Eugenie and Beatrice were not working members of the royal family, nor were any of their charitable things they were doing being paid for by the sovereign grant. Like all other family members, when they went to big important events, they were protected by the palace machinery and essentially police protection as well. That's why and that's what Harry and Meghan would have been covered as well. But when Harry and Meghan kind of dropped this, they're like, oh, we're just unhappy. And then the palace, I think to a certain extent was like, why? We've tried to bend over backwards to please you in every opportunity. We've given you enormous latitude in so many ways. We allowed you to spend Christmas away. I mean, other family members have done that too. But, Harry and Meghan just seem to want the world and were so frustrated when nobody else would give it to them. Or when people say, yeah, no, this requires a bigger conversation than you just dropping the bomb and yeah, we'll negotiate a couple things over email. That's not how this works. That's not how this works. And granted, I think we'll see later that it's actually not a terrible idea because a lot of other families are trying to figure out how to do this as well. But I think Harry and Meghan's motivation here is greed. It's not just that they wanted to pursue other things. They wanted money, as much money as humanly possible. And Meghan wanted to finally try to break into Hollywood because she failed as an actress. I mean, yes, she had a role. It was in a small TV show that didn't get a lot of press, that didn't get a lot of attention, that is well known now because of her. But let's be honest, it wasn't raking in the Emmys. It wasn't changing the world. It was just, and she was a supporting character on it. And she was like 7th on the call sheet, 6th or 7th. So her ranking on the show wasn't even that high. I mean, thinking about what I vaguely know about the show, it sounds like she was one of the last on the call sheet. I think she probably was, of the main cast, one of the last on the call sheet. And she's not a great actress. So again, I just feel like the palace is looking at this going, all right, it's just another demand from the annoying people we have to deal with that we don't like. I feel like that's what the palace was thinking. And Harry and Meghan, though, I mean, again, because they're spoiled, rotten teenagers and think that, the whole universe revolves around them. They didn't take too kindly to that. Harry had tried to speed up the matters by arranging to see his grandmother alone before he left Canada. However, the message was conveyed to him that the Queen had been confused about her diary and was no longer available. Harry was incensed because it was not true. The courtiers had got in the way, it seemed, because they saw the meeting with the Queen as an attempt to pick the Queen off before Harry started talks with the rest of the family. As one source put it, there was danger that a private conversation could be interpreted very differently by two different people. And I think this is smart. Again, she's in her 90s. Her mental faculties are probably slowly starting to decline at this point. And if it's a private conversation, yes, they're right. Two different people can see a conversation very, very differently. And I'm sure they were worried as well that Harry would try to manipulate his grandmother and go, oh, it's been so tough, they just don't give Meghan the front page every single day she does an engagement. And grandmama, they need to do that because, Meghan is the most important member of this family. That kind of thing. And he would pull at her heartstrings. And so they knew they needed to buffer the Queen because they need to protect her. They need to protect the rest of the family. This is not just Harry and Meghan's rodeo. Again, if you are dealing with a monarchy, it's an institution. There is a broader picture than just your own gains, but that's all Harry and Meghan have ever cared about is themselves. And so you see this again, and it's like, yeah, Harry was incensed, but did you not think that the palace was trying to actually protect the Queen from you? That was the purpose. They were aware of how you might manipulate her because you wanted X, Y, and Z, and they knew that couldn't happen. And they also knew that you could tell the press something very different than what actually happened because at this point, Harry and Meghan already have a track record of kind of not telling the whole truth, telling half-truths. And if Harry and Meghan make this blanket statement without the rest of the palace being in on it, then, I mean, we still got that anyways, but they could say things about the Queen that she doesn't remember saying, or that she, because of her age, does not remember agreeing to. And then they're stuck in this conundrum where Harry and Meghan are getting their way, and they're really kind of using an elderly woman and kind of, you know, abusing that relationship without thinking of the greater context. Again, this is so ego-driven, it's kind of ridiculous. That was said to have made Harry so cross that for a while he considered driving straight from the airport to Sandringham to drop in on the Queen unannounced. He eventually dropped the idea, but it was a sign of his frustration that he even contemplated such a move. Given that the couple announced their plans to stand down on January 8th, and the royal family met to discuss it all 5 days later on January 13, the so-called Sandringham Summit, it appears that the family diary was rather more flexible than originally appeared. Again, I don't know why Valentine Low was kind of putting in that little perhaps dig there, but I'm sure they did have plans, but then they're like, well, crud, we have to blow everything up because Harry and Meghan decided to drop a bomb on everyone. And again, it just feels so childish. The way Harry and Meghan act is so childish. This could have all been taken care of behind closed doors. But Harry and Meghan dropped this bomb and then just kind of watched the dominoes fall and were trying to get their way when some of what they wanted was they were just never ever going to get, because they couldn't get it. You can't have the half being half out Harry and Meghan wanted to, because they wanted to interfere in politics. I mean, they wanted to trade off their royal titles to make money, and that just wasn't going to fly. And so we have more on this. Harry and Meghan could be maddening, of course. They had already infuriated the royal family by pushing out their Megxit announcement on January 8th with the minimum of notice, when all the talks had been about issuing a joint statement. But the palace also showed the sort of initial inflexibility that was always guaranteed to infuriate them. Harry and Meghan felt cornered, misunderstood, and deeply unhappy. If the rest of the institution failed to appreciate that, even if their demands were unreasonable, the departure negotiations were never going to end happily. It is uncontroversial to suggest that the Sussexes would regard the talks as a failure. They wanted to find a compromise whereby they could live part of the year abroad but carry out some royal duties at home. No such compromise was found. Instead, they lost their royal duties, their patronages, Harry's military affiliations, their security, their income from the Prince of Wales, and for official purposes anyway, their HRH titles. They pretty much lost everything, except for the freedom to do exactly what they want. And again, I think that's incredibly true. Harry and Meghan, their demands just were unreasonable. They were never going to be met. The palace did actually investigate a couple of different opportunities, but Harry and Meghan just could not deal with the fact that, yeah, you know what, there are some restrictions in place. If you have this position, you are required to do certain things. You can't get anything for free. And I think that entitlement, that arrogance, I think is just kind of so indicative of how badly kind of Harry and Meghan have treated this whole scenario. Because again, with great power becomes great responsibility. You can't be traveling the world on the government's dime, you know, representing the Commonwealth, because they were the president and vice president of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust. You can't do that while simultaneously trying to prop up a president in a separate country, you know, doing these backwater deals like they did at The Lion King. That just was never going to work. That was never going to work. And that Harry and Meghan were reneging on what they should know they could have done initially, again, it just shows where their mindset was at, was that they did not care that the privilege they had, the positions they had are a gift. They're not a right. They were a gift, and you need to show respect. Respect is shown two ways. They need to respect the institution and the constraints of it if they want to be a part of it. If they don't, then they just need to leave and be done with it. But they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. And that was why the palace had to say, no, this is not going to work. The way you guys want to do this was never, ever going to work. The rest of the royal family lost a much loved member of the family. I loved how they just said member, not members. And saw the creation of a rift that has resulted in the self-exile of the Sussexes, still throwing barbed criticisms across the Atlantic. It will take a long time for the institution to get over the accusations the couple made in their interview with Oprah Winfrey, including the implication that the royal family is racist. No one in the royal family on either side can have been happy that Harry did not attend the memorial service to his grandfather, the Duke of Edinburgh, in March 2022. Yes, I noticed that. That March was actually one of my, in my first initial batch of videos, because it's like there was no reason Harry couldn't have been there. He should have been there. He should have been there for the memorial service for his grandfather. And again, it shows that Harry has severed all these ties just like Meghan has. And I'm sorry, but I put that influence down to Meghan. Harry never did this before Meghan came on the scene. I think he was always petulant. I think he was always naive. I think he was always kind of immature in a lot of ways. But I felt like he actually respected the institution. She blew all that up because she wanted to be Gwyneth Paltrow. She wanted to be an Oscar-winning actress without actually doing any of the work, because that's what she had done before. She had basically paid for a lot of her influence. She paid Sunshine Sachs to promote the heck out of her in the hopes that somehow it would translate to this kind of bigger profile. But here's the thing, and I think we're finding this now, when you don't earn it, it kind of falls apart on you. Because really at the end of the day, people respect people who have earned whatever they're given, not people who are just given it. And I think Harry and Meghan, without showing any discernible talent at this point, is really, really hurting them. In the immediate aftermath of the Sussex bombshell on January 8th, when the Queen said she wanted all 4 households to work together at pace to find a workable solution, Edward Young, the Queen's private secretary, was with the Queen at Sandringham. The first negotiations took place in Clarence House, Charles's home ground, over the following 4 days, with the private secretaries and communications secretaries from the 4 households all trying to find a way to make the Sussexes' dreams a reality. They gathered in Alderton's office, a sunny first-floor room where the paintings from the royal collection sit alongside photographs of Alderton's own family. Young would join the talks on the phone from Norfolk, but for the first few days, it was Alderton who was leading the discussions. There, they would all have talks at Buckingham Palace. Simon Case, Prince William's private secretary, who is now a cabinet secretary, also played a pivotal role. He was talking to both sides, said a source. So again, Harry and Meghan said, we're not happy. And the palace is like, fine, we get it. Let's see what we can work out. And again, this all would have happened after January 29th. Harry and Meghan, though, they just didn't want to do anything yet. And I think they wanted to rush to, I don't know, because I think it's really funny that the pandemic basically kind of destroyed whatever grand plans they had and kind of put them on the back burner for a while, which I'm sure was aggravating the heck out of them. But they decided that they were going to, the palace was going to say, okay, we get it. We know you're unhappy. We know it's because you think you're Beyonce. That's fine, whatever. We'll try to find a solution for you. But nothing they could do was ever good enough because Harry and Meghan did not want to protect the monarchy and keep it above board by following the guidelines that the other members of the family do. Because I feel like even those who are not on the sovereign grant, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, actually generally probably follow most of these rules. And it's because they respect the institution. Harry and Meghan didn't respect it. Unless Meghan could make $10 every time she shook a hand from somebody she didn't like, or more likely $100 or $1,000, she didn't care about anything else. She wanted the monarchy to work for her, but that's not how this works. It's an institution that has to see throughout the centuries. They have to play the long game. Meghan was just playing the short game, because if she had been smart, she would have waited at least 5 years. She would have given it 5 years, built up her reputation and everything. Now she's kind of tarnished it because she blew up everything. She left too soon and nobody could really attach to her or her children. So that was her mistake. That was a massive mistake, by the way. The people sitting around the table went through 5 different scenarios, which ranged from Harry and Meghan spending most of their time being working members of the royal family, but having a month a year to do their own thing, to them spending most of their time privately, but doing a select number of royal activities. There was, according to more than one source, a positive atmosphere in the room. They wanted to find a solution. At one stage, Alderton made the point that if they could get this right, they would be solving a problem for future through generations of the royal family who were not in the direct line of succession. Again, I actually see the point here. If they could have figured out how to manage this, they could figure out a solution for perhaps Charlotte and Louis. Although I think Charlotte and Louis will end up being working members of the royal family, because they're streamlining it, I think, perhaps a bit too much, given the territory and the grounds the British royal family do have to cover. Because they had the Queen's cousins, so that was, 4 or 5 members of the working family, in addition to, Charles, the Queen, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, his wife, Sophie, Prince Andrew at the time, then you had Catherine and William, then Harry and Meghan. Now they're just down to basically about 7 working members of the royal family. Or, no, maybe even 6. Yeah, because Charles and Camilla, Sophie and Edward, 7, sorry, with Anne, and Catherine and William and Anne. So there's 7 members, and you have to think Charles is the head of state for Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Those are huge countries. Those are big territories with a lot of people. So I think Charles, and the UK has about, I looked, it was about 67 million people. Denmark, it's under like 10 million. It's like, I think 8 million people. So yeah, Denmark, you can just go with the direct line. I think they're overestimating or underestimating themselves if they think they can really get by with just 7 members, really, because they have a lot more territory to cover. That remains to be seen. But I do think it is important to try to figure out how to manage these family members who are not in the direct line, so Charlotte and Louis's children. What will they do? Because they will still have that connection to the crown. Their grandfather will still be king. But how do they manage creating their own careers and still honoring the monarchy? Because that's the thing. That's the key thing that Harry and Meghan didn't follow, is that you need to respect the institution. Because you have those titles, you do reflect the monarchy broadly. I don't care what you guys think your titles give you. You do represent the UK, you represent the monarchy every time you use those titles. So if they could figure out how this would work in the future, it does help them. But I think Harry and Meghan, again, they have nobody's interest in mind but their own. It's a very, very selfish existence when you think about it. It's very, very selfish. They needed to think of the family. But, Meghan's torpedoed all her family relationships, and Harry's just following suit, it seems. By the end of the week, the 5 scenarios had been worked through. The view from the palace establishment was that however much time Harry and Meghan spent away from royal duties, anything they did would reflect on the institution. That meant that the normal rules about royal behavior would apply. They should not act or take decisions in order to gain financially or other material benefits for themselves, their family, or their friends. Again, it shows you what was it about for Harry and Meghan? Money, 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 money. That's all they cared about. That's all they cared about. Forget the Invictus Games, forget everything else. They just wanted the money. Meghan, again, is a hustler. So, she's had to pay people off, I think, to a certain extent. Maybe not, actual payments, but she's climbed the ladder. And you know what? People who helped you climb the ladder, usually they want something in return. That's kind of the thing. And so she's helped people. If they've helped her climb the ladder, they might be saying, hey, you need to pay up at this point. I need X from you. And so Harry and Meghan are stuck in this place where they can't get things, and she wants to continue trying to make it in Hollywood. I know I say that a lot, but really I think Meghan still thinks of herself as an actress. She still wants to be a Hollywood star. There have been at least one actress, Princess Theodora, I think, of Greece and Denmark, who was trying to make it in Hollywood for a bit. I don't know if she's still trying to do it. She didn't go to roles saying, I'm Princess Theodora of Denmark. But Meghan knows that everybody knows her title, and she can use it to peddle influence, because that's what she needs is influence, because she didn't have enough on her own. But the Sussexes wanted their freedom. Freedom to make money. Freedom to dip their toes into American politics. There was no way for the two sides to reach an agreement on that point. Crucially, it was the Queen who took the view that unless the couple were prepared to abide by the restrictions that applied to working members of the royal family, they could not be allowed to carry out official duties. One source said, there was a very clear view. You can't be in and out. And if you've got such clarity of view, it's very difficult to say, why don't we go 10% this way instead of 20%. Compromise was off the table, removed by the Queen. And again, I think that was smart. The Queen needs to protect Charles, William, and their future, and she needs to do that by taming Harry and Meghan to the best of their abilities. I think it would have been better to even strip them of their titles, but We're not quite there yet. I think we'll be there maybe at some point, because Harry and Meghan, not only are they dipping their toes into American politics, they're doing it with their titles. Because again, Meghan can't make it as Meghan Markle because she has to do the Duchess of Sussex because she doesn't have anything else to peddle. Could Harry and Meghan's departure have been handled differently? Did the most senior courtiers in the institution, Alderaan and Young, have a grasp on the situation soon enough? Were they unaware of how unhappy Harry and Meghan had become and how bad things had become with their staff? Or were they burying their heads in the sand? Did they let a personal dislike of Meghan prevent them from seeing the very obvious dangers that lay ahead? One former insider has described how Young's predecessor, Christopher Gilt, the Queen's long-serving former private secretary who was effectively ousted by Prince Charles in 2017, used to walk the corridors to know what was going on. Did Young walk the corridors? I think that's an interesting question. I mean, could things have been done differently? I think yes. I think actually the big thing was to actually really try to rein Harry and Meghan in a lot earlier, or just cut them loose immediately. I think that would have been the way to go, because I think the problem that the monarchy was running into and that they figured out is that Meghan did not want to conform. She did not want to work for the monarchy unless she could make the monarchy work for her. That was her ambition. That was her goal. And so even if they explained things to her, explained how X, Y, and Z work, she did not care. She didn't care. She didn't care to learn. She didn't care to change her ways at all, because at the end of the day, all she cared about was, hey, are you going to give me enough money? Are you going to give me freebies? I want Chanel. I want Dior. I want Christian Louboutin. She want Cartier. I want all these things. And unless you're giving them to me, I don't care about whatever else this institution can provide, because to her, it's all about money. It's greed. It's all about the material things it could give her, instead of seeing the monarchy as a 1,000-year-old institution that has had a huge influence throughout history, and being honored to just be within the presence of somebody like Queen Elizabeth II. Meghan never cared. She never cared. I mean, she's such an embarrassment as an American. She's so embarrassing as an American. She's awful ambassador, not only for the UK, but for the United States as well, because we all look like money-grubbing people who only care about ourselves. One former palace insider believes the way the developing crisis was handled was incompetent beyond belief. They said, I think Meghan thought she was going to be the Beyonce of the UK. Being part of the royal family would give her that kudos, whereas what she discovered was that there were so many rules that were so ridiculous that she couldn't even do the things that she could do as a private individual, which is tough. It just required the decision makers to sit around a table and say, okay, what are we going to do about this? What do you need to feel better, and what can we give? I think whoever said this is incredibly naive when it comes to Meghan. Again, even if they had bent over backwards, here's the thing, Meghan, we heard this quote earlier, Meghan never wanted to be happy. It was in the last video. Meghan never ever wanted to be happy. She didn't. She wanted to be rejected, because then she could take, her influence that she's gained from the monarchy and put it in Hollywood. That was her sole goal and objective. She didn't care about anybody else. She doesn't care about the institution. She doesn't care about Harry's family. She doesn't really, I don't think, care that much about Harry, except for the fact that he could get her all this attention and fame that she didn't have before. And again, that the idea that she thought of herself as the Beyonce of the monarchy, well, Beyonce has some talent. So far, besides hustling, we have not seen Meghan exhibit any, really. She was a pretty bad actress. Her and Harry can barely get something together. I mean, her Spotify production took 1.5 years to get together. That's and more than 1.5 years. That's really pathetic. It's really, honestly, very, very pathetic. Because again, everybody's doing everything else for her. All she has to do is sit down and record something. She has to get, the interviews lined up. That could take some time, but she is Meghan Markle. So I have no doubt that a lot of those people in Hollywood were kind of clamoring to do an interview with her. I do believe that. But again, it doesn't take her that long. It should not have taken them that long. And we have nothing from Netflix, and that deal is basically now 2 years old. 2 years, and they have nothing to show for it yet. That should be unacceptable. Because at this point, if you're just making a reality TV show, it doesn't take you that long to film. Now, granted, the Queen's death, I'm sure, amended some things, but still, you should have at least one season out. I mean, I bet you at the end of this day, they'll only have like 10 episodes. It's like, what were you doing for those 2 years? Like, seriously, what were you doing? So again, it just goes to show, I think, that no matter, I think, how close they would have watched Harry and Meghan, Meghan was never going to be happy unless she was the star. Unless she was the queen, she was never going to be happy with the monarchy, because the monarchy was there to serve her. And she didn't understand that they do this service because in exchange they get unbelievable privilege. To live in palaces, to have your staff paid for by the government, basically to wear tiaras and jewelry worth millions of dollars. That sometimes some of those pieces go back decades, if not centuries. She just could not grasp that there is a trade-off. You can't get everything for nothing. You know, if you are a Hollywood celebrity, sure, but this is a monarchy. All monarchies are like this. All of them have rules that they must abide by because, again, in order to enjoy great privilege, you have to have great responsibility too. People are expecting things of you. People want things of you. But Meghan did not want to meet the average Joe. She wants to hang out with Beyonce. She doesn't want to meet the butcher down the street who's working as hard as he can and struggling under the enormous pressures of the economic situation right now. She doesn't care about him. She doesn't care about anybody but herself and the A-list people she wants to connect with. That's her only concern in the world, I think, is that. And how sad is that? And what a terrible representative of America she is. Like, truly, it makes me so mad. There is, however, another view that nothing could have saved the situation. The two sides were just too far apart. Another palace source who has been critical of the Queen's private secretary, Edward Young, in the past said, I think that it was an impossible task. I think in Meghan and the household, you had two worlds that had no experience of each other, had no way to relate to each other, had no way to comprehend each other. And Meghan was never going to fit in that mold. And that mold was never going to tolerate the Meghan who Meghan wanted to be. So I think that it was inevitable that they would not be able to work together. I don't think there's anything Edward could have done about that other members of the family would have accepted. So I think, again, looking at this, so Meghan, I think, again, shows her incredible immaturity, lack of depth, lack of respect in this, that she could not, I get it. She was told, we were told in an earlier excerpt, somebody sat her down and explained to her what the monarchy is, how we work within it, what we do. And she nodded along, and he said, you know, he thought she was great, that she wanted to learn. I think the biggest thing too is that Meghan seemingly lied to the British people. She wanted to hit the ground running. She wanted to meet people. She wanted to get involved in the family. She was so excited. And I think all this comes down to is that I think that was a complete lie. She never cared. And again, there's something to be said for understanding as an adult that you have certain responsibilities you must fulfill based on your position in life. And there is, I think there's a kind of, it's called usually the serenity prayer. You know, God, help me accept the things that I cannot change and help me to accept the things, let me look it up now. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I think, again, obviously, Harry and Meghan were able to change how they interacted with the monarchy. But I think Meghan failed to accept that there were some things she could not change. And I think there is a, like it says, a wisdom to know the difference. And the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And I think there is a beauty in that prayer, because it is so true. There are things you can change. There are things you cannot change. And I think the real courage and the real strength is knowing the difference between the two. And Meghan wanted to make the monarchy conform to her. And that was just never, ever going to happen. If you want that life, you have to change. Catherine changed her life. Don't tell me Catherine didn't change her life. Yes, I think she had a greater appreciation and understanding of it. Queen Letizia of Spain, she changed her life. She was a journalist, and she was, I think, a pretty progressive person, and she's married into a very conservative institution in Spain, which is by and large, in many areas, a very conservative country. So she's had to amend herself. Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, she had to move from, well, I think she was in New York when she had met her husband, but she is originally from Argentina. She had to learn Dutch. She had to learn new traditions. She had to learn a new country, new culture. And I saw a quote of hers once and I screenshotted it, but now I have so many pictures I don't know if I could find it anymore. But basically said, you know, her job is to support her husband. And that's just the simple thing Meghan had to do, is learn how to support her husband. And there's so many other examples I could give of royal women who have changed their lives, given up their careers, and done it with grace and dignity, and have appreciated the life, the roles, the opportunity that a royal family can give them. And I think, although to a certain extent perhaps that they, in some ways, they might be unfulfilled, but at the same time they found paths and they found, you know, passions of theirs that they can really mold into the roles they have. And again, I have so much more respect for them than for somebody like Meghan, who didn't even try, was mad that nobody thought she was Beyonce, and was such a diva that no palace in Britain could hold her ego. And she had to jump ship and try to go into basically the vain and vapid world of Hollywood, because she's vain and vapid, I think. And so that's just my personal opinion, but you know, it shows you who she really is that this is where she wants to go, rather than saying, okay, let me just give it a few more years. Let me try to learn. And I think this goes back to in Tom Bower's book, he talked about how there was a theater teacher that said, well, you know, if you want to learn, you can be a great actress. And Meghan didn't want to learn. She didn't take that advice. And I think we see this here too. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years. It could take you a decade to feel finally comfortable in this world. But you know what? Perhaps there would have been great reward to have gone through that hardship, rather than just going, oh, well, I can't keep that free Christian Dior thing that where I put my name, Duchess of Sussex, on it. Really? So I'm just, you know, forget the whole thing. Again, that shows you, I think, a reflection of who Meghan really is. Both things are probably true. There was a collective failure on the part of those who work for the royal family to recognize that there was a serious problem, to flag it up, and to try to do something about it. There were no high-level discussions at any time in the first 8 months of 2019, when Meghan was said to she had suicidal thoughts, and the first clues were emerging that the Sussexes were plotting an escape, about the nature of their unhappiness and what could be done about it. But again, I think the nature of their unhappiness is Meghan's desire to monetize the monarchy in a way that she was not allowed to do. And I think that was her real consternation. But even if that had happened, I do not believe that it would have solved the problem. Their grievances were too deep-rooted, and the distance between what the Sussexes wanted and what the royal family felt able to give was just too great. Perhaps the best that could have happened is that the divorce could have been handled without all the acrimony that followed the events of January 2020. One thing is definitely true, however. If there were any failings, they were during the first year or so of Harry and Meghan's marriage. But again, I feel like, although I'm not totally convinced that Meghan for the whole time was thinking about Hollywood, but again, I don't think you could look at her and think, okay, I think the thing to have done was to tell Harry and Meghan from the jump, knowing how difficult she was just in the lead up to her marriage, going, okay, we're not going to do this. Do you really want to do this? But here's the thing. I think Meghan misled a lot of people within the institution. And Harry said he didn't tell his family about how unhappy Meghan was to a certain extent. I think they just kind of dropped everything on them and are shocked that everybody's like didn't know what to totally do. And I don't think, again, that they totally knew whether or not they could believe what Harry and Meghan were telling them. And I think they all knew too that the unhappiness had nothing to do with how she was treated and everything to do with her own ego. There is one final thought on this, and it comes from a surprising source, someone who knows Harry well but remains upset about what Harry and Meghan did. Their view is that perhaps the Sussexes' departure was not the untrammeled disaster that so many think it was. There is a part of me that thinks Meghan did Harry the greatest kindness anyone could do for him, which was to take him out of the royal family, because he was just desperately unhappy in the last couple of years in his working life. We knew he was unhappy, but we didn't really know what the solution would be. She came along and found the solution. Now I see that, and I see some truth there. If Harry was deeply unhappy, as a lot of people saw, and he was just consumed with the idea that George would replace him and that he only had so much time left, I completely understand that. What I have an issue with, and what I think kind of concerns me, is that they appear to be living Meghan's dream, not their collective dream or Harry's dream. And I think if Harry wanted to leave, he should have made that decision. Because I think maybe not now, maybe it'll take a year, a couple years, maybe a decade, who knows. Harry will realize that he was taken out of his family, torpedoed his relationships with some of the closest people in his life because his wife wanted to finally be an Oscar-winning actress. And he's living her dream, not his and not theirs. And I think there will be a tension that comes from that, because I am for, if Harry wants to leave, if that's what made him feel best, he needs to take the steps to do that. But that they're there in California, where they're at in California, screams Meghan to me. It doesn't scream Harry and Meghan, it screams Meghan. And I think Harry would have been happy in Africa. I think he would have been happy in Canada. I think he would have been happy maybe not being in the royal family, but still living in the UK somewhere. I think he could have found happiness, but he let somebody else lead them to their happiness rather than his. And I think there comes a point where resentment will start to build, because that wasn't a healthy exit strategy. That wasn't a collective, we both agreed, hey, let's do this together. We want to do X, Y, and Z. No, it was Meghan going, well, everything's terrible here. Everybody hates me and I want to leave. And Harry's like, oh, okay. And I get it. He wants to make his wife happy. But I think there's also something where it feels like Meghan, because she has always kind of led Harry, that at some point, again, the combustion will come when Harry realizes that, oh, wait. So what am I doing here? I've given up my family. I've given up my country. I've given up my friends. I've given up, my life. I've given up perhaps my charities, my relationships, all these sorts of things. And is he really getting the return that he expected? And is Meghan promising him things, or did she promise him things that she can never deliver? Because I'm always kind of convinced as well that Harry thought she was this huge actress. She was going places. And Harry came in and she gave up everything for him. She gave up her entire career for him. But I think that's an exaggeration, because I think Meghan, she was hitting her 40s. She's not a good actress. And at a certain point, you can't play the sexy sex symbol anymore. You start actually having to play characters. And I don't think Meghan was at the level that she could do that. So I think there was a desperation from her, because she needed a meal ticket, because she knew Suits was coming to an end and she didn't really have any other capital to do anything else. So she wanted to find a guy, a rich guy she could marry, that she could kind of elevate herself through him. And again, it's just one of those things where I think it was a combustible combination. And while I think there was some love there, I also think too, there's a lot of manipulation, a lot of half-truths. And again, you gotta wonder at some point, will their whole marriage, their whole relationship just completely disintegrate under the weight of a hastily contemplated Megxit, where Harry and Meghan didn't think anything through. They didn't get anything they wanted because they did not take the time to actually work with people. Again, it's an adult thing. You work with people to kind of achieve a goal together. But again, Meghan, there's no compromise. There's her way or the highway. And I think they're finding out that her way perhaps wasn't as glorious as they initially thought. And I imagine there is tension, a lot of tension in their home, because we've seen Harry, I don't feel like I see his eyes smile much anymore. He'll smile, but seems tense and forced. Meghan always grins ear to ear. It's so hard to tell what smiles are real and fake, because she does fake smile a lot. But I feel like the smile's not necessarily reaching his eyes. And we saw at the UN that their PDA, a lot of it is forced and demanded by her, because she's the one who grabbed his arm back. He let her go and she demanded it back. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I've only ever given their marriage 5 years. They're coming up on their 5-year anniversary. I think because Harry is so separated from his family that he has no other option. So, I mean, they're going to stay together because, I mean, what else is the guy going to do now? He's in Hollywood. He's blown up every relationship that's basically over a decade old to please his wife. Skippy Inskip, his long-term childhood friend, was not invited to his wedding reception, and their relationship was basically severed under the weight of Skippy saying to him, and like so many other of his family and people who knew him very, very well, are you sure about Meghan? And I think at some point, Harry's going to realize that they were speaking a lot of truth to him. And unfortunately, he's kind of stuck in this situation. And I wish him and Meghan and their children nothing but health and happiness if they can keep that. But I just wonder if you've created an exceptionally toxic scenario, and I can't imagine to a certain extent that things are going really well behind the scenes. But again, I could be totally wrong. But guys, let me know what you think about this video. Let me know what you think about my analysis on the latest Valentine excerpts. Thank you so much for watching, and for all those of you who have subscribed to this channel and the fashion channel. I'm so excited about the fashion channel. So I may do some shorter videos this week in preparation of trying to get all the stuff for the fashion video together, but I'm so excited. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.